Your contractor hands you the invoice. You scan the line items. Lumber, drywall, labor, and then your eye catches a materials charge that feels wrong. PVC conduit, a few hundred feet of white plastic pipe. The kind buried inside every wall of every new house in America. The price is higher than last year. Noticeably higher. You ask your contractor why. He shrugs. Supply chain, he says. Inflation, the usual answers. Those answers were not entirely wrong, but they were not entirely right either. Two of the largest PVC pipe manufacturers in the United States just agreed to pay $209 million to settle federal price-fixing charges. Not allegations buried in a footnote. A settlement signed, documented, filed in federal court. The Department of Justice confirmed it publicly in 2023. These were not small companies operating in the shadows. They were major industrial suppliers whose pipe runs through the walls of homes, schools, hospitals, and warehouses across the country. PVC conduit is one of the most boring products in the American economy. It protects electrical wiring. It costs almost nothing to make. It is, by every definition, a commodity, and commodities are supposed to be cheap, competitive, and predictable. So how does a commodity get a cartel? That is the question this video answers. The answer is stranger than you would expect from a plastic pipe. The price increases that hit contractors between 2020 and 2022 were not random. They were not purely pandemic-driven. According to federal prosecutors, they were coordinated. And the proof was not hidden in some encrypted server or a backroom handshake. It was filed publicly by the companies themselves. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which document, submitted under oath to federal regulators, recorded the financial fingerprint of this scheme in the company's own handwriting. You will understand why your contractor's materials costs jumped in ways that had nothing to do with supply chain chaos. The receipts are real, and they are hiding in plain sight. Here is what the industry told everyone. PVC prices went up because everything went up. Supply chains seized, chemical plants shut down. Resin, the raw white pellets that get melted and extruded into pipe, spiked nearly 70% between 2020 and 2021, according to American Chemistry Council commodity data. Ships sat anchored offshore, factories ran at half capacity. The whole construction materials market was on fire. Lumber doubled, steel surged, so when PVC conduit prices jumped, contractors grumbled, project managers absorbed it, and analysts nodded along. It made sense. It fit the story everyone was already telling. That explanation held for 2 years. Builders passed the cost downstream. Developers adjusted budgets. Nobody looked too hard at the pipes in the wall. Then the DOJ complaint landed. The class action filed in October 2022 in the Northern District of Illinois does something the industry's supply chain narrative cannot survive. It shows when the alleged coordination began. Not at the peak of the supply disruption. Before it, the complaint alleges the conspiracy to fix, raise, maintain, and stabilize PVC conduit prices traces back to 2018. 2 years before COVID touched a single shipping container. Read that again, 2018. The resin spike was real. Nobody is disputing the commodity data. But the complaint's timeline punches a hole straight through the official story. If this were pure supply and demand, prices should have moved when costs moved. They didn't. They moved in a pattern that, according to plaintiff's counsel Jonathan Rubin of Robbins, Geller, Rudman and Dowd, looked less like a market responding to pressure and more like a market being managed. Accor and Ottertail both settled. $136 million and $73.5 million respectively, per their December 2024 SEC filings. Without admitting wrongdoing, that is standard legal language. But $209 million is not standard. Companies don't pay $209 million because shipping was slow. So if the supply chain didn't drive this, what did? Here is what the supply chain story was designed to make you forget. PVC resin prices did spike in 2020. That part is true, but a raw material getting more expensive does not explain what happened next. In a competitive market, manufacturers eat some of that cost to hold customers. They don't all raise prices by the same amount, at the same time to the same distributors, using letters that went out on nearly identical schedules. That is the mechanism the class action complaint, filed in October 2022 in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, lays out in precise detail. The allegation is not that executives met in a dark room. The allegation is more mundane and harder to prosecute. Price announcement letters sent to distributors simultaneously. According to the complaint, defendants coordinated list price increases across the PVC conduit market during the period 2018 to 2021. Distributors received the new pricing, marked it up and passed it to contractors. Contractors folded it into bids. Homebuilders absorbed it into project costs. Buyers paid it on closing day, buried inside a mortgage they would carry for 30 years. Every link in that chain was acting rationally. Nobody downstream had a choice. The price was the price. Industrial economists call this coordinated pricing in a concentrated market, and the academic literature on it is unambiguous. When 3 or 4 manufacturers control most of a commodity market, they do not need an explicit agreement to move in lockstep. They need only to watch each other's announcement letters and match them. The DOJ calls that conspiracy. The industry calls it competitive intelligence. The antitrust bar calls it a $209 million settlement. But the settlement does not answer one question. Concentration in PVC conduit manufacturing is not new. These same companies controlled most of this market years before 2020. If the structure was always there, why did prices behave normally for so long? Something changed, and it wasn't the supply chain. Here is what Atkore told its investors. Not what a whistleblower alleged. Not what a plaintiff's lawyer argued. What the company itself reported, under oath to the Securities and Exchange Commission. In its fiscal year 2022 annual report, Atkore disclosed that gross margins on its electrical raceway segment, the division that includes PVC conduit, had reached 42%. The company was proud of this number. Executives described it to analysts as the result of pricing discipline. Pricing discipline, hold that phrase. Because Atkore's own earlier filings tell a different story. In the years before the pandemic, before the alleged conspiracy period began, that same segment ran margins of 18 to 20%. That is the historical baseline, documented across multiple prior annual reports. The difference between 20% and 42% is not a rounding error. It is hundreds of millions of dollars. The Department of Justice says the price-fixing conspiracy was active from 2018 through 2021. Atkore's margin explosion happened in lockstep. The same window, the same product line. The same companies named in the October 2022 class action filed in the Northern District of Illinois. This was not buried, nobody hid it. The margin figures were published in a document anyone could download from the SEC's public database, free of charge on any laptop, any afternoon. Wall Street analysts read those filings. Institutional investors read those filings. The company celebrated those numbers on earnings calls, in a room full of suited investors, on a projected screen in plain English. So who is not reading? That is the question that makes the antitrust lawyer's case so uncomfortable for the industry. The complaint alleges defendants conspired to fix, raise, maintain, and stabilize prices. The companies say the margins reflected legitimate market conditions. But the numbers filed under oath sit there regardless, patient and precise, indifferent to the explanation. Which raises the question this entire case now turns on. If the financial fingerprint of a cartel was sitting in a public document for years, what finally made someone act on it? Here is what was hiding in your walls the whole time. Atkor's 10K filing, submitted to the SEC in November 2022 and available free on Edgar to anyone with a laptop, disclosed that its PVC conduit gross margins had reached 42%. The historical industry average sits around 18 to 20%. That gap, more than double the baseline, did not appear during a period of exceptional innovation or engineering breakthrough. It appeared during the exact years federal prosecutors say the price-fixing conspiracy was active. That number is the financial fingerprint, filed under oath in the company's own handwriting. Remember the invoice from the beginning of this video. The materials charge that felt wrong. That wasn't inflation. Inflation was the cover story. What you were actually looking at was the moment the conspiracy worked, expressed as a line item on a contractor's bill. The $209 million in combined settlements, $136 million from Atkor, and $73.5 million from Ottertail, both disclosed in Form 8K filings in December 2024, does not refund every homeowner who overpaid. Settlement money in direct purchaser class actions flows primarily to commercial buyers, electrical contractors, distributors, construction firms. Individual homeowners sit further back in the chain. What the settlement does do is establish the price. It establishes that something happened. Courts don't approve nine-figure settlements over allegations that went nowhere. Every foot of PVC conduit sealed inside a wall built between 2020 and 2022 was priced during an active price-fixing conspiracy. That conduit is not coming out. The cost is permanent. What can change is enforcement. The DOJ Antitrust Division has signaled continued focus on construction materials pricing. Building products are next on the list. The document was always public. The margin was always there. Nobody had to leak anything. Subscribe for new breakdown like this every day.